Welcome to Rising Woman Leaders, a safe space for women to thrive in community where their voices and stories are heard. We're a sisterhood supporting each other to live our dreams and embody the sacred feminine to restore balance on our planet. Join us each week as we return to the unconditional love and guidance of our heart and our womb. I'm your host, Meredith Ram, and I invite you to walk this path of beauty, devotion, and service with us. I'm here today with Nancy Lucina, who is a mother of three, a doula, a shamanic facilitator, sacred sound therapist, and woman's coach. She's the creator of the Sovereign Birth meditation series that helps women to actualize their dream births, as well as the Conscious Conception, Welcoming Your Spirit Baby Home course. She uses her gifts of voice, sound, sensitivity, and connection to spirit to guide women from all around the world to awaken their ancient, deep feminine wisdom, embody the wise woman within, and live in truth and power. Thanks for being here, Nancy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I was just sharing with you before, but I came to find your work through Emily and the Free Birth Society podcast, and there was a period of time. So I'm very fascinated with birth. I'm not a mother myself, but it's been something in my life that I've just been drawn to books and stories. And when I found that podcast and was like, wow, I can hear real women's stories of giving birth, it was so just eye-opening for me. And also, birth is so unknown. It's like we don't know what's going to happen. And some of the stories are quite challenging, especially the ones that are maybe giving birth in a hospital and then they kind of find their voice and their power and decide to do something differently or birth on their own. And when I came to find your episode, I think it was the Screaming to the Goddess. And I heard your story. I was just like, this is so empowering. Like that, your story of your birth with, I think it was Elijah, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just like, wow, birth, there's a full spectrum of what birth can be, but your story was just like, it really, really gave me hope of what this can be for women. And I guess I just want to start there in birth and becoming a mother and just some of your experiences around that.
Oh, yeah. Well, where do I even begin? I mean, I'm pretty freshly postpartum as we're speaking because my son is only my third child. My second son, he's only 2.5 months now. And his birth was featured on a Free Birth Society podcast, should anyone want to tune in for more details. But his birth was pretty crazy because it was only 45 minutes. And it was really interesting, though, because I had to journey through what I would call the birth portal for about 2 weeks. I kept thinking I was going into labor with him, and then it would start and stop and start and stop. And I'm like, this is so weird because with my other two, I either gave birth right at 40 weeks or right before. So I'd never expected to go to 42 weeks before giving birth. I learned so much, though. I think every single birth really transforms you. And I believe that birth is a rite of passage for women, no matter how we experience it, really. But when we allow ourselves to, I guess, prepare for it more naturally and go into it with the mindset of life knows how to do this through me, I think we really get initiated into our power. And I love the word sovereign. You know, I use that in my course because I think birth really has that potential to activate our sovereignty. And I feel like if we need anything right now on earth, it's that. It's that activation so that we can yeah, really live in our truth and power. And that has so many ripple effects out into everything we do in life when we stop giving our authority away constantly. And I see that happen the most in birth. And so it can be like the most disempowering experience or the most powerful experience, depending on how we prepare for it and how we go through that rite of passage.
Right. And I'm curious, I don't know too much about your first birth and your first daughter, but coming to the decision of I can do this on my own. I trust my body. What was that like for you? Was that kind of what was that shift into being like, I really trust my body and can do this?
Mm-hmm. Well, with my first daughter, she was actually a planned home birth that ended up in the hospital. And I did give birth to her within the hour of getting to the hospital. And it was quote unquote natural. But it felt very disempowering in a lot of ways because I felt that the transfer was an unnecessary transfer that basically was just put upon me by midwives who had a time limit and thought I was taking too long and thought I was sort of stuck. The funny thing is with Violet, my daughter, this was like 12 years ago, I initially, it's kind of crazy because when I first became pregnant with her, and she was a surprise pregnancy, I started looking up. I knew immediately that I wanted to do natural birth. And one of the first things I came across was unassisted childbirth, and it's actually a book. And so I read that whole book, and I thought that I was going to do a free birth and unassisted birth. But toward the end of my pregnancy, I started to feel like I really wanted a woman there who had already been through this initiation to help walk me through it. And I think a lot of women, frankly, want that. And I think that there's just some major issues in the system, and even with certified midwives right now, like their hands are really tied by that system. And that was kind of the problem I gave birth in Sweden. These midwives only worked at the hospital and then like once in a blue moon would do a home birth. And so they kind of ended up bringing that system to my home. And, you know, I guess I had to go through that experience, which later helped me encouraged me to study to be a doula and just go down that sort of rabbit hole of birth. So then once it came time for me to birth Elijah, and gosh, he's not even 2. So this was like a decade after my first birth. It was just so crystal clear.
Yeah. So something that you said that was really standing out to me was just like that as women, we want someone there who's been through it before, and that these midwives, their hands are tied in a lot of ways because of the system. And I can totally relate to that if I think about myself and if I give birth one day, that like, yeah, your first time going through that, of course we want like a wise woman who's been there before, just to like be that pillar of strength.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not so much that we want her to necessarily do anything specific, but rather that we often want a witness. We want somebody to really witness us as we go through that portal, because no matter what, no matter how we give birth, we can't, regardless of who's there is no one to save us from that experience. It is a rite of passage, and that requires us to surrender 100%. But sometimes just those wise eyes and that open, loving heart to be there to witness you can make a really big difference in helping you to take that final step into that space of surrender. But I guess what I noticed is like in my birth with Violet, it was kind of the opposite. I had gotten to this place where I felt more than anything kind of spiritually stuck in my labor. And I mean, it became very psychedelic, actually. All of a sudden, the paintings were kind of dripping off the walls, and I was entering into a state that I wasn't so familiar with then. And I needed that more spiritual, assistance. But really what was happening is that they were getting so focused on my physical body and doing vaginal checks and saying I was 9.5 centimeters open. I had a little bit more to go. And so, yeah, flash forward a decade, I just knew I didn't want any kind of interference in my birth. It was so clear. And I had so much contact with my son in spirit form for like 5 years before I actually conceived him, I was also having dialogues with him throughout the pregnancy. And he was telling me really clearly, we're going to do this. We're going to just do this on our own with our family. I did end up having a really good friend there who is also a doula, and she and I have attended births together. And her presence was beautiful because all it was just like what I just spoke to. She, I think, burned some copal and and just was alming with me as I was making my sounds, and she was there to really create a super sacred, beautiful bubble for us postpartum. But she didn't do anything, and the relationship was such that I never looked to her to save me from anything. And I think that's really where the crux is in birth, and like how can we make it this incredibly powerful experience where we get initiated into our truth and our sovereignty. It's when we can let go of that idea that there's anyone who is going to, quote, save us from anything.
Yes. Yeah. And you mentioned that you and Elijah were connecting for 5 years before. Well, two questions. One is like, were you always connected to spirit in that way, or was that new for you? And then also just what did that look like, connecting with his spirit?
Yeah, such a beautiful process. I guess to answer the first question, I was, and I would say that I opened up that door and that spirit realm when I was about 20. Well, it's hard to say, right? You have these punctuated moments, but I've always been interested in spirit even since I was a little kid, and trying to understand the universe and trying to understand really who God is. So I guess it was nothing new for me, but I feel like I really made a big turning point in my early 20s when I started to work more with the spirit realm. And so by the time he came to me, I was very open. But the whole story to how I met my now husband is really amazing. And it's quite long, so I can't get into it. But basically, I look back on that now and I really feel that Elijah was guiding me to meet my partner so that eventually we could have him, and create our family together. And yeah, it's such an incredibly magical story. But it actually was so crystal clear. I started to hear a voice, literally just this voice that would say things. And as soon as I met Brandon, my partner, I heard that voice say, "This is your partner, your spiritual partner, and the father of your next child." And at that point in my life, I actually was not looking for anyone. I felt so good in my own vibration. And so I was kind of taken aback by that, but the voice was so crystal clear. And it was actually right when I was going through my Saturn return. So I was 29. And I had to go this huge death kind of rebirth phase. And then that voice started coming. Now, whether that was Elijah or a guide, or I don't know, it's hard to say. But looking back on it, I do feel that it was Elijah guiding me. And, I'll repeat this story because it's super cute, but I said it in the Free Birth podcast too. But I had this deck of cards, like an oracle deck. And when I met Brandon, it was interesting because he wasn't the typical kind of guy I would normally have been attracted to. And same for him. It was kind of an interesting match for us. Now we're just like two peas in a pod for sure. But we had these... it was just, we were surprised actually by how strong the connection was. So I sat down with this oracle deck, and it was this deck of fairy cards, and I asked the deck, what's up with this guy? Is this going to really turn into anything? Like, what's going on? And I pulled the card Son, S-O-N. And it was this little boy with the fairy wings. And it was like, oh, this message has something to do with your son, or you will have a son, or somebody's son who's close to you. And I just thought to myself, I drew the wrong card. This is super weird. I don't know what this means. I'm going to put it back, totally shuffle the deck, and do it again. And I pulled the same exact card.
I love when that happens.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay. And I remembered that voice saying, "This is the father of your next child." But it was quite interesting because shortly after meeting Brandon, he told me very, very clearly, I will never have kids. Just so you know, I'm really clear on that.
And what was it about Brandon that was different or that you wouldn't have expected to be with him?
Okay, let's just flash back to that period of my life. I did not own a phone. I was what people would call a total hippie. I was backpacking through Central America with my 4-year-old daughter. I was selling like chocolate balls, homemade raw food balls on the beach to make money for the day and then moving along. So I was very much in that hippie flow, and he was an entrepreneur. He had a MacBook with him. We were on the beach in Mexico when we met. He had like more of, I would say, a preppy look. It's funny though. Now that I know him, that's just his outside appearance, but inside he's super wild. But he can have that exterior so that he can get by in any kind of life situation. And also he had the most schedule, like his day was so scheduled. And I'm like, we're at the beach. Like, what are you doing? But he was studying at this yoga school. And he's like, I have to wake up and do my Uddiyana Bandha practices. I do 12 of them. And then I go to my 8:00 meditation class. And then I come home and I work. And then I go back to and I was like, whoa, your day is so full. And we're just hanging out in this beach town. Like we're supposed to be in hammocks, just, chilling out. So we were just very kind of opposite in that way. He was this short haired, kind of blondish. And I had always up to that point been attracted to the more like long haired hippie types, So that's what I say. It was more of an external appearance and a few other things, but, we kind of both rubbed off on each other in the best of ways. So anyway, he had said that very clearly, I'll never have a kid, but the communication just kept going. And in fact, I asked that Oracle deck another time. This was weeks later. And again, about Brandon, about something that was going on with us. And I pulled that same card, the Sun card. So it just became really obvious. And then my friend in that town owned a crystal shop, and it was Brandon's birthday soon. And I picked out a sunstone for him, and I bought it for him. And then my friend said, who's that crystal for? And I said, it's for Brandon. And we had only been dating for like a month. And she said, oh, you only give those to people who you really want to spend the rest of your life with. And so there were just all these little things, that were really solidifying our relationship. And Elijah just kept coming back to me. And I would get bigger, I guess what I would call downloads over the years. And eventually I began to tell Brandon about this being is communicating with me, and I really feel that it's our son. And he was quite resistant still, but he went through a whole process of opening up to eventually say yes to conceiving Elijah. And now it's amazing. He's just the best dad, and he's so into it. He just loves having kids. So it's quite funny. But Elijah would come to me in meditations, in ceremonies, in dreams as well. Sometimes when I was doing the most mundane thing ever and wasn't even trying to connect with spirit, he would come through and he gave me this crazy piece of writing about his name. And when you break down Elijah, I did a lot of research into it. It basically means my God is Yahweh, and Yahweh means I am that I am. So it's like my God is the I am presence. And that's always what I felt with him. And I'm just trying to remember some sort of key moments of communication. One time I went and did a float in the sensory deprivation float tanks, and I just started feeling this light language come through. But it was like this combination of Hebrew and Arabic somehow. That's the only way I can really describe it. And I just felt it was Elijah. And it was shortly after that I conceived. So I feel like he was working on me and kind of programming or opening me up to different things. And he was definitely working on my husband to go through a really big process of releasing wounds around his father, who has passed away already, and releasing wounds around self-worth. And I don't think Brandon was so aware of, oh, this is Elijah doing this for me, but I was. I view our children as beings of light and as pure balls of light that really come to purify us, whether we like it or not. And what I love about working with conception in a conscious way is that we can be aware before we go into pregnancy of that purification process. And gosh, he was doing that on so many levels for us. And we had a lot of changes in the course of our lives. We ended up moving from the beach to where we are now, more in the mountain desert area. And that was during my pregnancy with Elijah. And so, yeah, there's just a part of me that wonders how much of it is actually his soul that is saying, I want to be here when I'm born, take these steps. And so, yeah, I mean, I could speak for forever about that communication, but I think that's probably a good recap unless you have any specific questions.
Yeah, I have too many. But yeah, thank you for sharing. It's just really beautiful to hear that. And I guess what I'll ask next is just more about conscious conception, because this is something that we can all open to, right? And if we are wanting to call into a child, can you explain what conscious conception is and how one might begin to form that connection, especially if it's like brand new to them? They're not used to talking to spirit or any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in a way it circles back to what I was saying at the beginning about becoming our own authority and remembering that we have access to this kind of power and this connection to spirit within us at all times, even if we don't feel like we do, even if it's really new for us. I think what has happened to the feminine is that we've been programmed to not trust that intuition, to not trust those whispers of the heart. And so we have to work to undo that program a little bit to then hear what's actually going on. But I guess conscious conception for me is having reverence for the soul that you want to bring in. And so conscious conception looks differently for each person. It could be that you maybe do a physical cleanse first and prepare your body in a certain way. It could be that you set up an altar for that child, for that spirit, with some special little objects and calling them in through prayer, sitting at that altar with your partner or even just by yourself. It could be doing some sort of ritual with your partner as you're going to make love that really says, like, we're calling you in now. But basically it's just bringing that awareness to lovemaking and to when you're really ready to open up to receive this child. And it's a pretty wild journey, actually. And I think for a lot of women, it can be really triggering. It's interesting how I feel like getting pregnant just sort of accidentally, or maybe you're not really trying, but you also like maybe are fine with being pregnant. It's a totally different feeling. Conscious conception is this, I think it really tests you and brings you to your limits too, because sometimes you have these different control mechanisms that come in, and you want to really control the timing of it. You're like getting frustrated if you get your period again, and so it's this whole purification process I think that you can go through that again looks differently for each person. But I guess the way that I like to view it is just that simple having reverence for that soul, and so bringing awareness and consciousness to the process of conception. And then as far as connecting with spirit, where to start, I actually think listening is the first step. Really taking some time to listen and trying to kind of say to yourself, okay, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes a day. Pick a time in the morning, if you're a morning person, or in the evening, whenever you feel the most relaxed, and just make yourself available to listen, and make yourself available to listen to your body, your womb, your heart, your higher self, and of course the spirit of your child. And I think spirit babies communicate in so many different ways. Like some women feel more connected maybe to earth to the earth plane. And so they get little messages through things that they may find in nature, or animals that keep coming around, a specific bird. I've heard this time and time again, like, oh, my spirit baby has a connection with the eagle, for example, or an owl. And I saw an owl, and I saw an owl again, and I saw an owl again. And then the owl came to me in my dreams. So just paying attention to those little things. I feel like once you open up that request, and then you really drop into listening, you will receive a lot. And it may take some time, but eventually you'll get to that place of being able to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Looking for the signs, like asking for the guidance, and then just paying attention and opening up our senses. You mentioned control, and I think I remember you sharing that it wasn't right away. Like, it took a while to actually get pregnant with Elijah. Could you tell us about that time and what that was like for you, and maybe what you learned from that?
Yeah, it was, I think in total it took about 5 cycles. But the thing is, it took a whole year, because at one point Brandon was traveling, and then at one point he just totally dropped off of the conception process. So that was interesting and incredibly triggering for me, and I'll get to that in a second. But we started our journey with thinking that we were going to have an Aquarius, being so sure that Elijah was an Aquarius. And Brandon is actually an Aquarius. It's like, we're just going to have a little baby Brandon, and we're both air signs. I'm a Gemini. So I was like, great, I love Aquarius. I could have that, And so we had this whole plan around the night of conception. We waited until I've been tracking my cycles for years, so I know exactly when I ovulate usually. And so we were waiting until peak ovulation. We had rented this little cabin, and we had done this little ceremony. And then, I kid you not, when we go to make love, I couldn't feel a thing. I was just like numb. No sexual desire, to be very descriptive, no vaginal fluids, just like, nope, and it was so stressful to us, and we could not wrap our heads around it. And eventually we did end up making love, like later in the night. We were like, let's just go to bed. I don't know what's going on. And then we did end up making love, but we definitely didn't conceive Elijah that first time. And I think we just really learned in that moment, like, whoa, we're really controlling. And the thing about Brandon and I is that we both care so deeply, and we want to have such reverence for these souls. And so I think it's beautiful, but at the same time, you have to let go, and you have to let go and let God, right? Let God do God's thing. Let these spirit babies do their things. They know exactly when they're supposed to incarnate. They know which stars they're supposed to be born under. I really believe that they have that level of intelligence. And so we can't really get in the way of that. We can just simply open up and try as much as we can to enjoy the process. And it took I would say it took 3 cycles to really get to that place of, oh my God, let's just let go of this for a while. Mm-hmm. And then Brandon had to travel anyway. And then when he came back and we met up again, and we were actually in Europe, I had made this little altar with these 2 little ceramic things that was like a man with a little baby and a woman with a little baby. So it was kind of like, for me, those symbolized us calling in this child. And he I don't know what had happened, but his fear kicked in again of becoming a dad. And I think he was starting to go through that process of healing these wounds around his father. And so all that was coming up, and he just kind of shut down and said, I'm not ready to do this anymore. And I just ripped those ceramic things off of the altar and pouted away and went for a walk, and was just, I empathize with any woman out there who felt a connection with their baby and just knows they're supposed to be a mother, and their womb is literally aching and they're not able to conceive yet, because that's how it felt. And then to just have your just just drop off and process suddenly when you really felt like you were on this train together, it was honestly, in that moment, it was devastating. And I remember doubting Elijah, doubting all of my communications. And then I just went and I sat at my altar, and I do this thing frequently if I'm ever in doubt, where I just say to myself, okay, travel to the depths of your heart where you know the seed of truth is. Like, feel into that right now, beyond all of your reactions of being angry, of being upset, of feeling desperate. What is the seed of truth? And the seed of truth said, I'm coming, Mom. Don't worry. Just relax. Just relax. And it's like easier said than done, right? But eventually we made it through that hump, and it was really important because Brandon was doing all this purification work, and he just simply wasn't ready in that moment to really let go and say, okay, come in. And who knows, it clearly wasn't the moment for Elijah to be conceived anyway, in terms of when he was going to be born. And so then finally, I had just decided a couple of cycles later when Brandon said, okay, I'm kind of ready for this again. I just decided I'm not going to focus on this anymore as a goal. I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to live life and love life and try to get into a vibration of just being partners with life again instead of trying to control life. And I released this beautiful interview summit on my site. It took me so long. It took all my energy, so much of my creative energy to produce that. I did sound healings. I was having a lot of creative energy and it was all flowing for me. And I just honestly stopped. It's not that I stopped thinking about Elijah, and it's not that I stopped wanting him, but I just stopped trying. And I think that really is important. And it's like the act of surrender. You don't know how to do it until you've done it, kind of. But when you've done it, and it feels so good. And so that's finally where we got. And also, instead of making love only on the peak day or whatever, when I say that, I mean to say ejaculating and trying to conceive. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we just went for it, and we're like, whatever, let's just do it exactly whenever we feel like it, even if it's 3 days in a row or whatever. Because my partner and I practice Tantra, so we actually aren't doing that frequently. We're moving the energy and then choosing the moments when we release it, right? So this time we just said, let's just flow with it. And that was when Elijah ended up being conceived. And it's incredible because he was born October 15th. Brandon was born February 15th, and my birthday is June 15th. Mm-hmm. So there's a strong connection there, and he ended up being an air sign because he's Libra. And it was just so clear on the day that he was born. This was the day he was supposed to be born. How funny that we had to do all of that controlling and all of that trying to finally get to that place. But that's just sometimes what it takes, and you learn a lot of those lessons along the way.
Wow. I really feel the oversoul, like the guidance that he was orchestrating for both of you in those deep lessons. That is, I think, that story is something a lot of people could use. It's just like conception. It's such a mystery. This is something that is like cannot be controlled. And we do our best to try to control and make the circumstances and all of that and open the doorway. But even when we do everything, even if it's IVF and all of it, we don't know if it's going to happen. We don't know the mystery of how and why and when, and the timing and the astrology and everything that comes together is so incredible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I've said this before, but I think it's worth repeating. I really do believe that conscious conception, regardless of if your baby comes to you or not, is a process of becoming your best self. And it's a rapid transformation and rapid path to growth. And I believe that those spirit babies, regardless of if they decide to incarnate or not, are there and are being those balls of light that are purifying you. And I've seen that a lot with women who have to, for some reason, go through this process of trying for a year or trying for 2 years. Suddenly when it happens, it all makes sense when they look back, because they see all the ways in which they've grown and all the ways in which they've aligned.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Can you speak more just about the children that are coming in now and the spirits that are on that other side guiding us, and what your feeling about that is?
Oh, yeah. They are, it's like makes me want to cry just even opening up about that. I see it in, well, of course I see it in all 3 of my children, but gosh, these 2 that just came in, they are just pure, I guess what some people call crystal children. They are just so pure, and we really have to work so hard to protect that purity. And they want us. I really believe that these souls that are choosing to come to this earth now in this very odd time that's full of, honestly, so much darkness, they need us to be in our truth and in our power, and they need us to be in that sovereignty so that we can really mother from that heart place and from that place that's guided by our womb's wisdom, rather than from, oh, this expert said I should do this, and this expert said that I should not sleep with my child because of this and that reason. This expert told me that I need to have them in a crib in the room next door, and all these different ways that these quote experts give advice. And I see it over and over and over that mothers are like, that doesn't feel right to me, but I don't know what to do. And I'm telling you, these kids, they want you to do what feels right in your heart, and they need us to be doing that. Now I feel like there's no time to waste, and it is our responsibility to raise these children with that reverence, just like the way that we have that reverence when we conceive them. And really the message that I keep getting from these souls is, please let me come in with as little trauma as possible, because I have big missions here. Like, I have big things that I want to do, and I want to get to work. I really see that in my son, who's not even 2 years old. He is incredible. He has a big mission, and everybody around him is like, wow, he's so present, he's so awake, he's so interactive with me at such a young age. Like, he really is in his body and knows what he's doing and knows what he wants. And I really feel that as his mother, it is my duty to just make sure that that path is really clear. So to work through as much as I can all of my past traumas and all of my programming that does not serve my evolution or his, and really just keep that path super clear and not lay on all that extra stuff for him so that he has to work for a lot of his adult life to undo it. You know, mm-hmm. These souls just, they want the clear path so they can come in and be in their mission.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And I'm thinking about just when you got to that point and were pregnant with Elijah, and then deciding to birth at home and just with your family. And I think something that a lot of people can struggle with is like, what I'm receiving a clear guidance to do something, but other people on the outside or family are judging it or worried about it, or it can create separation or isolation. And I'm just curious how you went about dealing with really following your truth no matter what, despite maybe challenge of what other people think.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I see it. I see women struggle with that constantly. And I won't lie, it's hard, especially when it comes to family. Thankfully, my family, I already, by the time I had Elijah, it was like, well, they already think I'm crazy, kind of. So I laugh when I say that. Like, even if they were to listen to this, I think that they would kind of agree with me. I've done things that have worried the shit out of them constantly, so it's like, this is nothing new. But to be completely honest with you, I kept my birth plans like a little treasure inside of my heart. I did not share them with the world. I did not blast it on social media like, I'm going to have a free birth. And I didn't even straight up tell my parents or my mother-in-law and father-in-law, or even some friends who I knew would just be like, no, that's not cool. What are you thinking? I just did not share it. I tuned into the Free Birth podcast religiously because I think women sharing their stories is some of the best medicine we can possibly ever get, especially around birth, because it's just stories. It's just their truth, And so I found that to be incredibly inspiring. And of course, I talked about it a lot with Brandon, and I'm really grateful that I have a partner who doesn't question me. He really understands how precious my intuition is, and he really allows our lives to be guided by it. So that was a struggle that I didn't have, fortunately. But yeah, gosh, if I could give advice, it might be that for especially for birth and these other, and even around conscious conception, like just really asking yourself, is this going to serve me to share this? Or should I really hold on to this like the precious treasure that it is? And then when it's time to share, after you've had the free birth or whatever it is, it's like, yeah, here's my free birth, and then you're there to answer any questions that people might have. But especially when you are opening up these portals to conceive, and when you're already pregnant, you're very sensitive, you're very vulnerable, you have a lot of access to your power, but you're also very, very open and kind of permeable. And so I think not letting all of those stories come in is part of the process, and that might mean not sharing your story yet,
Yeah. I think that's very wise advice to keep it close. And in the age of social media, a lot of us feel like, well, like, we're just that we have to share everything, or that that it's a way to connect with others, or to be vulnerable, or to be brave. And it's like, and that discernment. And I had a friend once share a priestess practice is like when to conceal, when to reveal.
And I love that.
Yeah, keeping some things close, and really allowing yourself to be guided about when and if it's the right time to share. So we're kind of in a birth process in the world right now. It's kind of, I think of that, like the messiness and the okay, we're kind of just in it, and things can get really hard, I think, right before the birth. I mean, I imagine from what I hear from women talk about the birth process. I would love to hear just your thoughts on where we're at in humanity and in the world right now, and everything we're seeing unfold.
Oh, wow. What a question. It's something I've been contemplating every single day for a long time now. Here's what I think. I think that we are at a crossroads. It feels very clear to me that we are at this fork in the road, and either we're going to choose to continue to go with the systems that are destroying us, that are destroying the planet, that are pumping us full of fear, that are traumatizing our children, and the list goes on and on and on, or we are going to take the path of what I call the new earth. And that path is the unknown, and it's the mystery, and it's the moment by moment guidance from that deep heart space. And I have so many different ideas of how that could potentially look, and ways in which I already see it forming. But at the end of the day, when I come back to it, and sometimes I have moments of fear, for sure, just like you're saying, when you're in labor, you hit these walls sometimes, and you're like, maybe I can't do this, maybe this was a bad idea. But I just have to keep going back to that heart space and asking myself, what am I here for? And I know in my heart that I am here to help midwife this new consciousness and this new way of being that's really almost like an ancient way of being, connecting with those ancient practices and sources of wisdom, but really allowing that other system. And this is where I think it's the hardest for me, allowing that other path, and whoever wants to go with that system that's currently in place that is destroying us, allowing that to happen without judgment, and keeping my focus on that new earth, and keeping my focus on that heart space, and being moment by moment guided. So that's kind of, without going into a lot of detail, because I have so many different opinions on this current world event. But I feel like that's kind of the gist of it, and what keeps being really clear to me. This is a crossroads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that. I guess one of the things that I've been thinking about it, or seeing about it, and letting myself see a lot more the challenge and the inequalities, and it brings me to heartbreak quite a lot, and just feeling like, maybe even one of the ways that we're here right now to work through this is like to feel it so deeply, and to like let it move through our bodies, and to let our hearts break, and that somehow is contributing, that is like part of this energetic unveiling that's happening right now.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And I think that we shouldn't discredit our own individual work in that way. And that if we are broken down on our knees, crying and praying and grieving, that we are working for the entire collective in that moment. And a lot of that work is super messy. A lot of that work never gets seen, never gets praised, but we're doing it. And to know that that is a really big part of this process, and to not take it lightly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A question I love to ask women on this podcast is around overcoming our fears, and or working with them, or learning through them. Or I'm curious if there's anything from your life, and I can just imagine probably a lot through becoming a mother and parenting and all of it, but anything that comes to mind for you now around some of your biggest fears that you've encountered in your life, and how you've worked with them and worked through them and come to that other side of wisdom.
Oh, yeah. I think what I've learned over the years is to really not fight with my fears, to know that they're coming up because they are actually trying to protect me, usually from what is unknown, and to just give them space, to listen to them, to breathe through them, to allow them to move through my body, as you said, instead of resisting them and pretending like they're not there, because eventually they do something, and it is some kind of a purification process. But again, like I said before, sitting at your altar, finding that little seed of truth in your heart. And I've had some really dark moments where that seed of truth felt like it was the size of a little, grain of sand amongst so much darkness, and fear and all kinds of stuff. And what I have noticed, so it's kind of like you're walking this path, and you take small steps through those fears, and then you notice on the other side, oh wow, it's brighter on the other side. Okay, I wonder what happens the next time a fear comes, and maybe it's even a little bigger, and it's a little more unknown on the other side. What happens if I just still walk through that? And you just keep walking this path, so that eventually it becomes so grounded in your being that you can trust that heart's wisdom. And I feel like there are these certain moments in time where it's very, very, like I said earlier, punctuated. And I had one of those during that Saturn return in my life, when I literally had no money, my partnership had dissolved with my previous marriage. I had no really home. I was backpacking through Central America with my 4-year-old, like I said. I had to really face the unknown, and it was so scary, but I just kept going back to that little grain of sand in the heart that said, keep going, keep going. And then the amount of magic that opened up on the other side was just mind blowing. And so I feel like you have those moments in your life that come, and then they become these anchor points for you to reference later in life. Like, okay, I'm in this again when I'm feeling a lot of fear, I'm feeling uncertain, I don't know what's on the other side of that. But remember that time when I trusted? Okay, let's see what happens this time, because life is always more expansive than we can imagine when we are on that heart's path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think about the times when, so like for me, an example, one of the things that was my biggest fears was public speaking. And I had to work through a lot around that to feel comfortable and really sharing my voice. But when I did get to that place of like diving in and trusting my guidance and being there, like the feeling on the other side of it was total elation. It was just like total liberation and just like, oh my God, I dove into that and I did that. And even though I'm shaking, I'm just like, whoa, that was amazing. And a more recent example, we recently built a sauna on our land, and we have a cold plunge. And for so long in my life, I like avoided the cold plunge. Oh, I'm already a cold person. I don't want to do the cold plunge. But like if someone had just told me earlier, like you feel amazing after you go into you get through that little like that bit where it's kind of just intense. And I imagine birth is like that too, right? You get it's just like you dive into it, and there's in a way no other choice. But the feeling on the other side, I imagine, must be so elated.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And now that you're raising 3 children, is there anything you would want to share, speak to, just around parenting these beings that have so much light?
It sounds so cliche, but I guess one of the first things I want to say is it goes by so fast. So whatever you do, enjoy it and try to be as present as you possibly can with them, because suddenly your youngest is 12 years old and becoming a little woman. I mean, it's totally mind-blowing. And I think now that I'm a little bit older of a mother, like kind of going through my second round of babies, since I had a decade between, I really get that really, really fully. And I feel that I'm in full acceptance and surrender of the phase that I'm in. I feel like what I see women struggle with a lot is making that transition from maiden to mother and leaving behind that life of being able to do sort of whatever you want, whenever you want, to then suddenly, okay, I got to answer to this being now. But I can just say, if you really allow yourself to surrender to that fully and accept that phase, it is so beautiful and it gives you so much, and it goes by so incredibly fast. So I think that's kind of my number one thing is presence. Just be really, really present with these children, and they will guide you. You know, there are a lot of course, different things that you can learn about parenting and gentle parenting. And I think it's important to be the authority figure in their life when they're really young, because they need certain boundaries and they need to know that they're really, really safe and protected. But there's a balance of being that authority figure while also allowing them to be their fullest expression. And to not take their little outbursts personally either, just to know that they are incredibly sensitive and that they're coming in with more sensitivity than you are. And I know I'm a very sensitive being, but I can also say that my kids are like 100 times more sensitive right now, especially when they're little. And so just continually recognizing that, I think, as you're parenting them, and knowing that they're always doing their best to process the incredible amount of information. Yeah, I think those are my 2 main things.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, we're so open to the world at that time.
Yeah.
Can you tell us just about your courses and what you are excited about in your work right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I am really excited about, well, I have two courses. I guess I'll talk first about the birth one. It's called the Sovereign Birth Series, and it's a meditation course primarily. It also has rituals and journal prompts in it, but it's a 9-part course that takes you through different kind of topics in birth, and it uses a hypnosis guided meditation for each of those topics to really help you prepare. I feel like it's really accessible for all kinds of different births, really, but especially for those wanting to birth naturally. But even if you're going to give birth at the hospital, even if you're going to give birth at home with a midwife, or even if you're going to have a free birth, it's really, really helpful. I used both of those. I used that course in both of my previous pregnancies. I mean, my latest, not my daughter, because it wasn't created yet. And it helped me so much, especially in the last 2 weeks of Owen, my thirdborn's pregnancy, because I kept thinking I was going into labor and I wasn't. I was just like, oh, I have to just surrender and let go. And my meditations helped me really quite a lot. So you can find that through freebirthsocietycourses.com. And then my latest course that I just recently released, actually right after I gave birth to Owen, is around conscious conception. So it's called Conscious Conception, Welcoming Your Spirit Baby Home. And it ended up being this really unique journey through the elements. So we start with earth and we end with ether, and each module is focused on a different element. And there are videos, and there are meditations, and there are also journal prompts and some rituals and something that I call allies. So for each of those elements, there's a different section that has recommended crystals you can work with, essential oils, some recipes, some herbal infusions, and some flower essences. And so those are all to assist you in this journey with each of these elements. And then I also do some interviews with women. So 5 different women about how they've connected with their spirit baby and what conscious conception looks like for them. And there are a lot of bonuses as well. So I already am getting feedback on it, and I really am so thrilled with what women are saying. They're loving it. And something that I've had reflected back to me a lot is kind of what I spoke to already in the interview of, I feel like I'm becoming my best self throughout this course. I feel like it's not just about conceiving my child, but really about working to come into alignment with my higher self. And then from that space, opening that portal to receive my child.
Yes. I'm so glad you created those. And I'll include your website and links in the show notes, and anything else you want to share around just where people can find you or find these courses. Do you have any closing words or anything you just want to leave people with as we finish up today? And I'll end with a short prayer.
Okay. Oh, the thing that's just coming to me right now for anyone listening is, you are more powerful than you think. You are more connected than you think. You are more multidimensional than you could ever imagine and wrap your head around. So just remember that, and as much as we can, live our lives from that space. And the world right now needs us to really be doing that, I feel.
Beautiful. So just inviting us all to take a moment and just breathe it in. Any gems or wisdom or insight that you wish to take with you today. The letting go of control, the tuning into the higher guidance, the listening to our hearts, the letting go of expectations, keeping things close to our heart that are meant to be just with us for the time being. Listening to the guidance of when to share, when to offer, when to give. And just bring my hands to my heart and just thank you, Nancy, so much for being here within this conversation today and sharing your wisdom. And thanking everyone here that's listening and showing up and willing to grow and evolve and become our best selves. Namaste. Blessings. much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you liked it, share it with a friend or leave us a review on iTunes. You can also follow along on Instagram at Rising Woman Leaders and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com to be sure to receive all the new and inspiring content. Thanks again for being here. It's an honor to walk this path with you.